Alhamdulillaah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I get started, could I ask you to indulge me for a few seconds? I want you to imagine something. Imagine that we as Muslims, that we as an ummah are in a better place than we are in right now. Imagine that we are strong. Imagine that our lands are not ravaged by war anymore. Imagine that our people are not oppressed. Imagine that our countries are not bombing one another. Our people are not suffering through war and poverty and hunger. We are not constantly fighting amongst ourselves. We are not constantly at each other's throats because of sectarian differences. Imagine all of this. Now, dream a little bigger. Imagine that not only are we doing well, but we are at the top of the hierarchy. We are empowered individuals. We are not ashamed of our identity. We are not afraid to call ourselves Muslims. The rest of the world looks up to us. They look up to us for our values of tolerance and kindness and justice. They look up to us for our scientific contributions, for our progressiveness, for our intellectual growth, for our humanitarian work, for our ability to excel both morally as well as intellectually. Now, hold that image in your head. You're probably thinking, this is a fantasy. It sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, look at where we are now. But what if I told you that this was in fact the case just 8 centuries ago? Only 8 centuries ago, we Muslims were the pioneers of progress. Islamic civilization was flourishing. We were the leaders, spiritually, economically, intellectually, and politically. What seems like a far-fetched dream today was a reality then. And that is the legacy we lost. The legacy of a people who lived by the Quran and Sunnah. The legacy of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his companions and the righteous caliphs. And there's a great deal we can talk about in terms of the legacy we lost. We could talk about what led to our downfall as an ummah, about how we got distracted with material gains, about how we forsook our values of justice and brotherhood, etc., etc. But today I want to focus on just 2 simple concepts. 2 things that formed a vital part of that great legacy. 2 things that we seem to have forgotten today. The first is the pursuit of excellence, the pursuit of itqan or ihsan. And the second is the idea of equipping ourselves with deen as well as dunya. Let me give you an example that pretty much sums up how we as Muslims lack both these traits today. The pursuit of excellence and the balance between deen and dunya. So I was talking to a friend in English, and while we were talking, she made a grammatical mistake, and then she corrected herself. And then she said, some of the things we say in our regional English are just wrong grammatically. And then we laughed about it. And someone was standing nearby, and she overheard our conversation, and she turned to us and she remarked, so what? It's not the language of the Quran. That left me dumbfounded. The idea that because it's not the language of the Quran, it doesn't matter whether or not you speak it well. The idea that it is not important to excel or to strive for excellence in anything that is not directly Islamic in the narrowest sense of the word. This is a very dangerous outlook because it lets you believe that it's okay to settle for mediocrity in aspects of the dunya. Rasulullah ﷺ said, and this is a profoundly important hadith, he said, Inna Allah kataba al-ihsana ala kulli shay. Verily Allah has prescribed excellence in everything, in all matters. That means whatever good you do, whatever endeavor you take up, Allah Azza wa Jal wants you to do it in the best way you can. And then Rasulullah ﷺ continues, فَإِذَا قَتَلْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الْقِتْلَةَ وَإِذَا ذَبَحْتُمْ فَأَحْسِنُوا الذِّبْحَ وَلْيُحِدَّ أَحَدُكُمْ شَفْرَتَهُ وَلْيُرِحْ ذَبِيحَتَهُ. He said, if you have to kill in the best manner. And if you have to slaughter in the best manner. Let one of you sharpen his knife so his animal is spared of suffering. Rasulullah ﷺ is saying that in every little thing that we do, we should do our best, and not simply for the sake of our own benefit. Rasulullah ﷺ is asking his companions to do their best to be kind to the animal until the very last moment. He's asking you to pursue excellence in the way you treat those who can do nothing for you. That's ihsan. How often have you heard the phrase, will so-and-so take you to Jannah? And you can replace so-and-so with any skill or interest that is not considered directly Islamic. When you're trying to excel at something and someone goes, oh, come on, this is not going to take you to Jannah. Whether it's academics or art or sports, honestly, is that how narrow-minded we've become? This is exactly the kind of mentality that is responsible for our dismal failure in the academic and intellectual landscape today. Why do we settle for mediocrity when we can choose to excel? As Muslims, we're not supposed to do that. We cannot settle for mediocrity. And if you're thinking, what's the point of giving my best in this project, in this job, in this exam? It's not like it's going to help me with my akhirah. Well, guess what? That project, that job, that exam actually will help you in your akhirah if you let it. If you do it with the right intentions, it's an ibadah. Every act, no matter how insignificant, can be an act of ibadah with the right intentions, as long as it's not something that displeases Allah, of course. And you will be rewarded for it. Studying for an exam, cleaning your room, even taking a nap. We can convert these basic everyday acts into good deeds. How? If you go to school or college with the intention that you're doing it for Allah, that you want to gain beneficial knowledge, you will be rewarded for it. Every minute you spend in the classroom becomes ibadah. If you take a nap with the thought that you want to wake up energized so that you can be more productive, you'll be rewarded for it. If you're a teacher and you start your day thinking, I want to make a positive impact in the lives of my students, I want to help them pursue their goals, I want to bring them closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, you will be rewarded for teaching. The Salaf used to say, عبادات أهل الغفلة عادات وعادات أهل اليقظة عبادات. The acts of worship of the heedless are mere ordinary acts, while the ordinary acts of the heedful are acts of worship. The acts of worship of heedless people become mere ordinary acts, while the ordinary acts of the heedful become acts of worship. So we can transform our entire day into ibadah if we choose to, simply by changing our mindset. It's that simple. Coming back to the pursuit of excellence, Rasulullah ﷺ also said, إن الله تعالى يحب إذا عمل أحدكم عملا أن يتقنه. That Allah Azza wa Jal loves that when one of you does a job, he do it with excellence. When you're memorizing the Quran, you memorize in the best way you can. When you're studying for a math exam, you study in the best way you can. When you're cleaning your bedroom, you clean in the best way you can. That is ihsan. And our ummah is in need of people of ihsan, people of excellence. Look at where we are today. Take a look at the stats. Out of the 802 Nobel laureates awarded for the sciences, literature, medicine, and economics, only 5 were Muslim. 5 out of 802. That's 0.62%. And keep in mind that we are 24% of the world's population. Now, I'm not saying that this is the best yardstick to judge our progress by. Of course not. We could argue over the equality of opportunity or even the relevance of the system. But one thing is clear. Our contribution has been spectacularly poor. Physics World contributor Jumal Khalili says in one of his articles, between them, that is the Muslim countries, they contribute only about 1% of the world's published scientific papers. We are 24% of the world's population, but we contribute 1% of the world's published scientific papers. In fact, in 2005, the entire Arab world combined published fewer scientific papers than Harvard University alone. So, do we want to be remembered as a people who scarcely contribute to the advancement of the human race? Or do we want to be remembered as the trailblazers that we once were? There used to be a time when the Islamic world was the heart of scientific growth. When Europe was drowning in the dark ages, it was our people who lit the candle of knowledge so that its glow spread across the East and the West. For over half a millennium, Arabic was the language of science. Arabic was the lingua franca of the world. People traveled from all over the globe to the Muslim lands to study the sciences. Our lands were the epicenter of invention and discovery. We were the best in science, math, art, architecture, geography, economics, medicine, philosophy, social sciences, what have you. We were the best in everything. We were the scholars, we were the doctors, we were the inventors and the discoverers. We were the pioneers of faith and progress. Where we walked, we left a legacy. But look at us now. We've drifted away from the Quran and Sunnah, so we failed miserably in our spiritual affairs as well as our worldly ones. The Muslim Ummah needs people of ihsan. The Muslim Ummah needs people of itqan. Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed all of us with certain skills. Use your skills in Allah's way. If you can write well, use that skill in Allah's way. If you can speak well, use that skill in Allah's way. If you can teach well, use that skill in Allah's way. Because the best way to thank Allah for a skill or a blessing that He has bestowed on you is to use that blessing, that skill, in a way that pleases Him. To use that skill in His way. The Ummah is in need of your talent. If you excel in math, in art, in sports, in academia, whatever it is, the Ummah needs Muslim mathematicians, Muslim scientists, Muslim artists, Muslim thinkers, Muslim philosophers, Muslim writers, Muslim professionals who are true to their faith. But we need to sort out our objectives. Many of us are doing what we do for no other reason besides the fact that it's an easy option. We're just going with the flow. You're studying medicine because your parents want you to be a doctor. You're taking up Islamic studies because nothing else is available. You're an engineer simply because the pay is good, or so that your parents can show off your degree to their circle of friends. That is not the pursuit of excellence. That's the pursuit of prestige, of money, of fleeting material gains. The pursuit of excellence, of ihsan, is something greater. Ask yourself, why do you do what you do? Why are you studying what you're studying? Is it for the sake of prestige? Is it because your friends are doing it? Is it because your parents forced you into it? Or is it because you have a goal? You have a passion. You have a desire to make a positive impact in this world. Do what you're passionate about and do it well and do it for the sake of Allah. Ask yourself, why did I study so hard for that exam? Was it just to get a good grade? Or was it because of a genuine desire to learn, to increase my knowledge, to use that knowledge in the way of Allah? There needs to be a purpose. There needs to be a passion, a drive. To live a purposeless life is to merely exist. And as Muslims, we cannot merely exist. Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us that we are the best of people. Kuntum khayra ummah. You are the best of people. That's a massive responsibility. We have the honor of being the best of people, but with that honor comes great responsibility. So know your objectives. Strive for excellence with the akhirah in mind. We are so self-absorbed, we are so caught up in our own lives, we forget to ask ourselves the question, what do I want to contribute to the lives of other people? What do I want to do for the ummah? What kind of a legacy do I want to leave behind? What will be left of me after I die? These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves every day. Why did the Muslims before us succeed? They had a vision. Their objective was not simply to excel for personal pride or for prestige or for wealth. They did it for the sake of Allah. Dunya is not an end in itself. It's a tool. You use dunya in the way of Allah. So we need to push ourselves to be the best version of ourselves that we can. Often we think to ourselves, when will the help of Allah come? When will the time come when the Muslim Ummah is no longer humiliated? When will we regain our lost honor? But Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. That Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. We need to strive for change. We cannot expect Allah to change our situation without playing our part first. You need to contribute to the Ummah in whatever way you can. The baton is in your hand now. So will you while away your time scrolling through your social media feed for hours on end? And by the way, this is a reminder for myself first before anybody else. Will you waste away your youth living a life of meaningless entertainment? Or will you do something worth your time on this planet? Will you utilize the time and the talent that Allah Azza wa Jalla has blessed you with in a way that pleases Him, in a way which will lead you to the everlasting bliss of the home of the hereafter. And there's another issue that we must address. The idea that our progressiveness is directly proportional to how non-religious we are. That's what many of us Muslims believe. We think that the more progressive we get, the more non-religious we are, the more progressive we should be. And that's what the West wants us to believe. The West thinks that the more you drift away from religion, the more progressive you get, because that is their experience with religion. The Catholic Church, as we know, stifled scientific research throughout the 16th and 17th century. They persecuted scientists because their discoveries clashed with the biblical narrative. Galileo was forced to recant, and Bruno was burnt at the stake. And it was only after the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment that scientific theories were met with more tolerance within the church. But when it came to us Muslims, a whole different story played out. When we Muslims lived by the Quran, when we equipped ourselves with deen as well as dunya, it was the exact opposite, right? The sciences flourished under our rule. In the Middle Ages, in the medieval period, when the Islamic world was at its cultural peak, we made remarkable contributions to medicine, to astronomy, to philosophy, to literature. So progress does not and will not come about by us abandoning our faith, by moving away from the Quran and Sunnah. It will come about by us returning to it. Umar radiallahu anhu used to say, نحن قوم أعزنا الله بالإسلام فمن ابتغينا العزة بغيره أذلنا الله. We are a people whom Allah Azza wa Jal has honored through Islam. So if we seek honor from other than that, then Allah will disgrace us. And this is precisely what explains our state of affairs today. We go looking for honor in everything other than our faith. Our faith is something we're ashamed of. So we need to equip ourselves with both deen and dunya. Only then can we bring back the golden days of Islamic civilization. Only then can we as an ummah unleash our true potential and reach the pinnacle of our strength. We need to cultivate our technological, scientific, and intellectual prowess so that we can utilize it in the way of Allah. We need to be the writers and the orators, the think tanks and the scholars, those who hoist the flag of Islam on the poles of reason and science and art. We must excel, not for personal pride, but to play our part in whatever way we can for the pride of our faith. Because our legacy is a legacy we must reclaim. Ours is a path that has been carved by the greatest men. Ours is a destiny that is radiant like the stars. Ours is a faith that burns bright in the darkest times to guide us to the highest peaks and beyond, if only we carry its glow in our hearts.